Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us at In the Know. We're catching up with some of your favorite celebs, reality TV stars, and more direct from their homes. I'm your host, Gibson Johns, and today we're joined by Taylor Tomlinson, whose stand-up special Quarter Life Crisis debuted on Netflix earlier this spring. Taylor and I chatted about her output of content during the quarantine, including both of her podcasts and a mini-series with her boyfriend on Instagram. We also talked about growing up in the church comedy circuit that she started off in, the pressures that come with being a millennial comic, and the effect that having a Netflix special has had on her career. Keep listening for my full, hilarious interview with Taylor. Hi, Taylor Tomlinson. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. We're recording on a Friday, so I'm happy we're almost kind of at the weekend where I can really, really veg out. But
I know, it's so funny. I'm like, do we have to carve out weekends for ourselves still?
it's kind of unclear right now, but we're kind of doing it day by day, I think, right now.
Yeah, it's like we're all having one long shitty weekend.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. How have you been spending your time the past, month or so as we've all been social distancing?
I mean, I think I'm doing what any other comedian is doing right now, which is kicking themselves for not buying YouTuber equipment. Um, you see so many stand-up comedians now, like doing these Zoom shows or like Instagram live shows. And
Right.
I haven't gotten to that level of desperation yet. But of course, my boyfriend's been with me, thankfully. We're usually long distance, so this has been like kind of nice for us to get to hang out. But
Interesting.
yeah, so that's a little silver lining. But like he and I started a podcast and, have been doing like a little mini web series and just trying to feel creative and not worthless.
Right.
As a stand-up comedian, your whole thing is performing a lot. And when you can't, you're like, who am I?
So I feel like you've been kind of throwing yourself sort of still into creating content and working kind of, this is what you do. And do you feel like people are appreciating having this extra source of, laughter and putting a smile on their faces?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of really nice messages about, what we've been doing online and the special I just put out on Netflix, that people are watching in quarantine or maybe rewatching. And it's very nice and humbling because I feel the same way about certain movies or TV shows or Instagram accounts. Like they're such a good way to distract yourself and pass the time and still feel kind of connected to other people.
Mm-hmm. It really is bringing out a different kind of creativity in people, I think, right now. I mean, you've been doing the New Couple Gets Quarantined series on Instagram, which I think you referred to. Was that just sort of an kind of a off the cuff thing that you guys started doing?
Yeah, I mean, it was like in the first day or two that Sam, my boyfriend, and I were stuck indoors, where I think I jokingly said, because we've only been dating like 6 months, and I was like, we should do a web series about the fact that it's way too soon for us to be spending this much time together. And he was like, that's hilarious. We should absolutely do that. And then within like 10 minutes we were doing it, because that's the kind of drive and work ethic he has. I would have just like sat down and eaten more mac and cheese and let that thought, drift out of my head. And he was like, no, this is how we're going to do it. And we'll do it right now. And this is the first 3 episodes and we'll put out 2 today. And you're just like, oh, okay.
Amazing.
I guess we'll be productive. Yeah.
You complement each other well, clearly.
I hope so.
And then you also have 2 podcasts. You have Self-Helpless, which was existing, and then you also launched This Is Important to Me with Sam, I believe. How is this new life right now? How has that sort of affected the output of the podcast specifically? Has that affected your workflow at all? Talk to me about how you've been able to kind of still put out stuff.
Yeah, it's weird because in some ways you have so much more time now.
Right.
You feel like you should be producing more content to make up for the fact that you're not working. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I think that's what most of us are doing, is just trying to stay relevant and provide some sort of entertainment and relief during this time. But I'm sure there are also people who are like, I'm just going to disappear for a few months.
Totally.
And I'll be back when everything's back. And I don't think either approach is wrong or better. for us, I think we'd go crazy if we weren't working in some
It's an outlet.
capacity.
Yeah.
It is.
It's an
It's an
outlet.
outlet. So like Sam and I are putting out 2 episodes a week of This Is Important to Me, where each episode one of us shows each other a movie that was important to us that the other person hasn't seen yet.
I love it.
So like I made him watch Harry Potter. He's never seen any Harry Potter
Never seen
movie.
Harry Potter ever?
Never even caught a glimpse of it. I
Wow.
know. I know. We watched the first one and he goes, so it's like, he's like, so it's like Harvard for magicians.
I guess that's one way of putting it.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah, you're not far off. And then he made me watch Goodfellas and Chinatown. I mean, he's a little bit older than me, so he's had more time on the planet to watch a bunch of classics. So I
Right.
feel like his picks are going to be like cooler than mine. Whereas I'm going to be like, you've never seen Harry Potter or Lord of
But
the
you're gonna
Rings?
he's gonna kind of give you the background knowledge, and you're gonna kind of keep it a little bit more hip and kind of current, I guess. So we're gonna
Right.
balance each other out again, I guess.
He's like, this week Casablanca. I'm like, all right, cool. Next week Twilight, also a classic. So we've been putting out 2, and then Self Helpless. We used to do 1 episode a week, and in addition to our Patreons, and now we're doing 2 episodes a week. So
Got it.
I think a lot of people are doing that with podcasts, where they're like, we have the time, we can do it over Zoom. Let's
Hmm.
just bank as many as possible.
Totally. Well, I think that's a nice balance because it sounds like you're sort of leaning into that, I guess, if you want to call it a pressure to churn out more stuff. And I think that, people appreciate that. But like you said, it's not something that everyone has to be doing. But I love that you're doing that.
I mean, even like very famous people are doing it. That's the
Very
weirdest
famous.
thing.
I mean, every day I go on Instagram and there's like 6 people partnering up going live, and it's just like, okay, it's a little bit overwhelming, but I like that people are kind of just adapting to this whole situation.
Me too, but it is funny as an entertainer who's not like insanely famous, you are posting these sketches and videos without fully realizing you're competing with Miley Cyrus talking to Elton John
Exactly.
on like her Instagram live show. Like it's such a strange world we are now living in.
I know, but I think it also kind of, people will seek out what they are looking for right now. I think, your stuff is super funny. I think Miley's stuff is a little bit more heartwarming and about mental health and things like that. But, I think that there's something out there for everyone right now to kind of get that escapism, or just have to kind of laugh about it in the way they need to laugh about it, because, we have to all get through this somehow.
Absolutely.
I want to get into the specials with Netflix, but first I would love to, if you could give us a little bit of background on your comedy journey. I know you started performing as a teenager in church. Talk to me about sort of how you started, and then take me along kind of the Spark Notes version of your kind of journey to where you are now.
Yeah, I started when I was 16. My dad wanted to take a stand-up comedy class together just as a way to like hang out. I think he thought it would be fun. And obviously when the class ended, he went back to making money, and I started, doing this for a living. Not right away. Obviously I went to college for a minute, but yeah, I went to college for a few years, was doing stand-up during that time and working. And then like I had a year left of college when I dropped out, because I was on the road too much.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just kind of, it's kept rolling. Every year I'm like, this is the year that everyone's going to find out I'm not really that good. And then they keep letting me do it. So that's nice.
No. Was there a moment when you took that class with your dad, and was it immediately clear to you that this is kind of the direction you wanted to take your life? Or
no, I don't think I totally understood that you could do it for a living. I think I thought you had to be famous to do it. And it did take me a little while to realize that. Like I started listening to comedy podcasts, and that kind of taught me how to become a comedian, because I had no idea. I grew up very sheltered and conservative. So I don't think that I was planning to be a full-time comedian for the first couple years by any means.
Was there a moment when you kind of were like, okay, this might be working, this kind of path that I'm taking?
Yeah, I mean, I think once I was like 19, I met somebody who told me, like another comedian who I remember told me like, you're good at this and you don't work hard enough at it. And I think up until that point I had been too afraid to work hard at it because I didn't want to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, if you don't make it as a comic, like, you have no one to blame but yourself right now. And that really changed things for me. And that's when I really started like going at it hard, like every single night instead of just like a couple nights a week. And that really changed everything for me.
And you said you looked up how to become a comic or how to become a comedian, and I feel like that. I'm not as familiar with comedy, the journey of it, but I feel like now that with the internet, when the internet became a thing, the journey to becoming a famous comic probably changed. I feel like before there kind of used to be this, everyone probably took similar paths of coming up through clubs and things like that. But has that journey changed? Because now there are so many different ways that you can become a comic, and has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many. I think you're right. I think you hit it on the head with. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can become a comedian now. You
Mm-hmm.
can blow up online. You can, start in a different market like I did, like a church market. You can start doing open mics. You can start in a smaller town and then move to LA or New York. You can start in
Mm-hmm.
New York or LA. I mean, there's no one size fits all for becoming a stand-up comedian. I think everybody has slightly different ways that they get here. That being said, I think the one thing that everyone has in common is you just have to get on stage as much as humanly possible, and that's the only
Right.
way to get good.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel? I mean, you came up in the church market, and did you feel like that was something that you had to overcome, or is that something that you played into more? Because I've noticed as from the sets that I've watched of yours that you bring up sort of your religious upbringing a lot, and it works really
Mm-hmm.
well. But how did you sort of embrace or not embrace that kind of your origins?
I think I was definitely trying to avoid. I was trying to avoid becoming a church comedian. I was
Got
very
it.
clean as a comedian up until like 4 years ago. When I did Last Comic Standing, which
Right.
was like 5 years ago now, um, they they wanted to do a whole background on me, and I was like, that would be great, but I would really prefer not to do the whole church comic thing. And they were like, totally, we get it. We're just gonna film you at a church and say like, this is how you started. And um, when it came out, it was very much like, this is the only church comic on the show, and I was like,
Right.
no.
That you
And
were like
then
the church comic, right? You
yeah,
checked that
yeah, yeah,
box.
yeah. And I worked in churches for maybe another year. And
Uh-huh.
again, I was doing clubs and colleges. Like I was doing every type of room. And at a certain point, I got fired from a church gig for tweeting something with innuendo in it. Like there was no swearing, there was nothing. Like it was innuendo. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm good. I don't want to have to be worried about this for the rest of my life. Just
It's
to
constricting.
occasionally, yeah, just to occasionally perform in a church for, there's a lot of money in that market, to be honest. And
Hmm.
it was hard for the people representing me to wrap their head around it for a minute when I was like, I'm not doing any more churches. And they're like, okay, but how about this one for this much money? And I'm like, you have to stop sending me these offers because
It's
these
not a
church
money thing.
markets, it's not a money thing. And these churches want me to be, they're hiring an idea of someone that I do not
Mm.
fulfill
Hmm.
anymore. And it's not fair to them. I feel like I was tricking people because
Right.
I didn't want to talk about those things anymore. Um, or I wanted to talk about different things at least, and I wanted to um, grow up a little bit, and I wanted to not be so scared of
Right.
saying the wrong thing and being fired or shamed for it. So um, that was a big decision for me, and I'm really glad that I made it.
Was that sort of a weight lifted off your shoulders when you ultimately made that decision?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And I mean, I just love, I love performing in comedy clubs, and like that feels like the place it's supposed to happen in.
Hmm.
And
And there's no
once
constraints.
there's no constraints, and obviously there's still you still have to be careful because nowadays with like cancel culture and whatnot, but
Right.
it's nothing compared to what church cancel culture is.
That's,
So
I mean,
for me,
in some ways you were sort of primed for that a little bit.
absolutely, absolutely. Am fully trained in cancellation culture as a result. But yeah, I think it was good that I started out that way because it's much easier to get dirtier than it is to clean up what you already have.
Yeah. Once you've crossed that line, there's no coming back, I guess.
Exactly.
So, I mean, fast forward, you've done Conan, The Tonight Show. Those were two huge, I mean, those were moments for you that gave you huge platforms. And then you appeared in the comedy lineup on Netflix before this year. Quarter Life Crisis came out, which I was obsessed with.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Full disclosure, when I saw that, when that came up on my Netflix page, I had never heard of you, and I was so happy that introduced me to you. I related to a lot of the things you were talking about in that, and I love that you talked a lot about our generation and just kind of poking fun at that. Talk to me about getting that special, because that's a huge moment for you, and sort of what that's led to for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for watching it. That's
yeah, of
so
course.
Nice. I'm glad Netflix is working.
It truly, we can say what we want about Netflix, but it works, and
it works, man.
Yeah, love it.
I love it. We submitted this hour almost exactly a year ago, or a year before it came out. And then it was a few months of waiting to find out if we got the hour. I was shooting for half an hour because I have low self-esteem. But I sent the hour going like, they'll be able to see there's a half hour in here that they like, hopefully.
You cut the fat, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, maybe, in the future they'll go, Taylor's been doing an hour for a while. And then over the summer we found out that we got the hour, and then I had, July, August, September, October. I had like 4-5 months to prepare for it. When I found out, I was very, very happy for about 10 minutes, and then I was very, very scared.
Right. Yeah.
And felt very guilty.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a big thing. You run through all these emotions that you don't expect to have. And then once I was done crying, I was like, you know what? We got to hunker down and work really hard to be worthy of this amazing opportunity you were lucky enough to get. And that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. Have you, since it came up on Netflix, have there been moments or jokes or, what have you, clips that have circled back to you more than others? Are there things that people are responding to that you found?
Ooh, like the ones that people have been quoting the most?
Yeah. Like what have people been pointing out to you about the special? Because there must be standout moments for people.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people quote jokes they like back to me. I mean, it's a lot of people in their 20s or 30s saying like, oh my gosh, this is me. And I feel very seen, and all those great things you like to hear. Honestly, I got a lot of messages about the shoes I was wearing in it. That might be like the number one thing that everyone's been asking me.
What were the shoes? I mean,
they're these Steve Madden like wedge sneakers. And for whatever reason, I mean, people were like, where do I find those? And they weren't on the website anymore. I had gotten them at like some store in Arizona on a road weekend.
So funny.
And so I couldn't find them. So other people had to find them for me. And then finally, Steve Madden's company reached out on Instagram and was like, we put them back online.
Amazing.
So,
wow. Your impact. And I'm curious, and this might seem sort of like a vain question, but I think that right now it's sort of what people pay attention to right now. I'm curious, like after Quarter Life Crisis hits Netflix, does your Instagram following just skyrocket? Like what kind of effect did that have on your various kind of other channels?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was huge. Like it came out about a month ago. And when it came out, I think I was on Instagram at like around like 75K, and now I'm at like 220.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's Netflix. It's the thing everybody has.
Do you feel pressure to perform for that extra 150,000 people that are now following you? Like,
yeah, man. So I'm putting out all these podcasts and stuff. Right. I'm like, we got to keep them here. Because usually you'd be on tour and people would be able to come see you live after discovering you on Netflix, and now they can't, and we don't know when they'll be able to.
Have a
So it
virtual
has
tour.
been. I know that people are talking about that, believe
Yeah.
me. I mean, everybody's trying to make it work here. Whereas like before, none of us would have done live streams or anything because
Uh-huh.
you're afraid of people screen recording it. Now we're like, we don't care. We
Screen
don't
record me as
care.
much as you want. Right.
Do whatever you want. Just tell me I
Right.
exist.
Do you, and this sort of gets into a question that I've been wondering is, you're a millennial comedian and you are releasing all these different forms of comedy, podcasts, videos on Instagram, Netflix special, you're on the Tonight Show, you're on, do you feel, is it ever overwhelming to have to be putting out all these different types of content, making people laugh, making sure you're being funny? Like, how do you sort of stay grounded in all of that? Because I feel like that's just a lot to be working on.
It is a lot. It is a lot
Mm-hmm.
to be working on. I mean, that's the cool thing and the unfortunate thing about the internet now is you have
Mm-hmm.
so many different ways to connect with fans and audiences directly and find your own audience. But at the same time, there's so much more pressure to be constantly and consistently providing people with content. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
before the pandemic, it was like that. You had to stay in people's minds because there was so much to compete with. So yeah, I definitely feel some pressure to keep churning stuff out. And I mean, you get emails from your agents like, might be time to write a script, and you're like, oh my god, okay, how am I
When,
busier?
right,
Yeah. Yeah, Sam, my boyfriend's like, we're busier now than we were, it feels like
right,
somehow. It's
seriously.
crazy.
Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I mean, do you remind yourself that it's like not everything is going to be a hit when you're putting that much stuff out, and some stuff's going to really, people are going to love, and then some might not track? Is that, how do you, I'm just curious, sort of, how do you remind yourself to just like stay okay with it all?
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's day to day.
Yeah,
Some
yeah,
days I'm fine with it, and then some days you put something out that people don't respond to as much, and you get in your head and you go, I'm losing them. I'm
right.
losing everybody, and I shouldn't have posted anything, and I should just disappear for a week. And
No.
you really, yeah, it's easy to spiral for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just do the best you can. I think especially right now, people are being pretty forgiving of bad content or like content that misses the mark. I think a lot of people are just getting credit for putting an effort right now.
Right,
So that's
makes
what I
sense.
try to give myself. I try to give myself credit for even
Mm-hmm.
making a thing, even if it's trash.
None of it's trash, Taylor. I'm just, not everyone's gonna love
Thank you.
everything. Have there been any, surreal people that have reached out to you to react to something that you, either your special or just a random video that you put online? Have like any of your, idols or huge comedians out there?
Oh gosh, I mean, Jim Jeffrey sent me a nice message,
Mm,
and I've never met him, and that was pretty cool because I
really
think
cool.
he's amazing. Yeah, it's just cool. You have people, you realize people start following you, and you're like, why is Olivia Munn following me now? Like, does she realize who she is?
How
Like,
did she get here?
how
Right.
did she get here? So stuff like that, like, is very cool and also very strange, and you realize like everyone's a lot more accessible than they used to be. I mean, with Instagram and Twitter and on all that,
Mm-hmm.
you can get to your favorite stars now.
So true. Is Olivia Munn the most famous person that follows you? Who is the
It's
most
the one
famous?
that came to mind. You know why? Because I think she followed me before the Netflix special came out, so she must have
Okay,
just seen a video. But that was definitely one that my friend. Because now, honestly, my followers grow every day because of the
of
Netflix thing.
course.
So I don't keep track of who's following me anymore as easily.
Uh-huh.
But that was one where when that happened, I sent it to like my girlfriends, and we were like, "What?
I love it.
That's crazy!" Like that was one I remember. So.
Hmm. And to wrap things up, I mean, I keep coming back to the Netflix special, but that's just because it's just such a huge platform for you, and it has the power to really change your career. What do you hope comes once kind of a lot of this stuff settles down and we can go outside and do things again? What do
Mhm.
you hope comes next for you? What do you hope that quarter life crisis leads into for you ultimately?
I want to tour. That's what I want to do more than
Yeah.
anything else. I mean, everything's changing, so who knows what'll happen. I think it'll be back eventually at some point. But obviously we have, shows we want to make and movies we're writing, and like every comedian I know has always got a few irons in the fire, and we're definitely working on things that we've been developing before all this happened, and as well as new projects. So hopefully all of that happens as well. I mean, right now everything's in so much of a holding pattern that it feels strange to continue to develop projects or continue to plan things or write or cast or whatever. So it's definitely a strange time, but that's the ultimate goal, is just to be able to make things that you're proud of and that make people laugh and make people happy.
Totally. Well, Taylor, I can't wait to see what comes next for you. I appreciate you taking the time to talk, and I hope that you continue to remain safe and healthy, and we'll see you on the other side, I guess.
I know. Thank you so much for having me. Of course. Thank you for watching the special. It means a lot.
Of course. We all love it. Thank you so much. For more stories from In the Know, go to intheknow.com. You can also follow In the Know on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and find me, Gibson Johns, on Instagram and Twitter at Gibsonoma. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.